Hello and welcome to the Practice as Research seminar series. I know it's bright and early this morning. It's 9 o'clock here in the UK. It's great to have you all here from wherever you are in the world. I'm really excited because we've actually got somebody from the other side of the globe, and that's really exciting. I'm really pleased that Sonia agreed to do this session for us, which is why it's 9 o'clock here. She's actually currently in Australia, and it's something like 7 o'clock in the evening for her. So first of all, thank you very much, Sonia, for joining us. Sonia is going to be talking today about her work and ethical considerations in embodied practice. Dr. Sonia York-Pryce is a dancer, a photographer, a videographer, and an interdisciplinary artist. From the about 1960s to the present day, Sonia has trained and danced extensively in ballet and contemporary dance, initially in the UK, but then also settling in Australia in 1994. She studied classical ballet at Elmhurst Ballet School, the Royal Ballet School, and the London School of Contemporary Dance, as well as the Laban Centre in London. Sonia's doctoral research, Ageism and the Mature Dancer, examined how senior professional dancers aged over 40 still perform and navigate the dance by date perpetuated within Western dance and consumer culture's obsession with youth. I mean, I must say, it's really fascinating to hear Sonia's talk and you know, to sort of hear Sonia relate to her research and relate to ageism when, you know, I'm obviously already on the wrong side of 40 myself, and suddenly you're no longer this kind of spring chicken that you always think you are. So here we go. I'm going to hand over to Sonia. Just to say, we will be having opportunities later to obviously discuss Sonia's work with her. So if you do have any questions, make a note of them and we will raise them with her in the discussion session afterwards. But with no further ado, Sonia, I'm handing over to you.
Okay. Right, so I'm on the screen. Oh, thank you so much, Nicole, for that lovely introduction. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. And as Nicole said, I'm coming to you all the way from Australia. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, hopefully. Hang on a second. Right, okay. I think we're there. Okay, here we go. Right, so still moving, ethical considerations in embodied practice. So this is me. As Nicole said, I'm a dancer. I'm an older dancer. I trained extensively in the UK. I'm a 65-year-old dancer. And after teaching for many years in Australia, I'm now back to being a pupil. So I take ballet 3 times a week, sometimes 4. And that really started back in 2013 because I wanted to understand what it's like to dance with an older body. So being in my 50s when I started this research, it made me realize that I was a certain age and I was ready to understand and experience the perceived negativity of flawed bodies and ageism. So in my 50s, I really became interested in aging studies and how discriminatory Western dance culture is towards dancers aged over 35. And that's mostly within classical ballet companies, but slightly less so in contemporary dance, though some dancers would definitely disagree. The considered norm is to retire from performing at, say, 35 or 40, but we know many choose to end their careers earlier, as the stigma of aging for a dancer is experienced much earlier compared with sedentary life. So retirement for some is sometimes due to injury. Some are starting a family or already have a family, or others are just being eased out of the major roles. So in 2013, the research began. I decided to investigate ageism within Western dance culture and to find out who these older dancers were, where they were located, and to find out why they were not more mainstream and why ageism in the field of dance is so ingrained. The aging body is a taboo issue in society, let alone in Western dance culture. Therefore, emphasizing their craft and creativity through screen dance invites a broader audience to look beyond aesthetics, to give recognition to their embodied artistry. Western dance culture is body-centric, an art form centered on the youthful. Therefore, the corporeal difference of the older dancer becomes a political stand in an art form that views perfection foremost. Indeed, the concept of the ideal dancer's form is contentious. My focus is also on their digital presence. I used film to concentrate on the corporeality of these dancers, demonstrating that the aging body can be viewed positively despite an art form that prejudices decline. So film can be used to illustrate these dancers who are often sidelined, the invisible dancer, considered surplus to use, the disenfranchised other. So who inspired my research? Okay, there are three dancers, these are well-known dancers who went on to dance in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And of course, Margot Fonteyn, Martha Graham, Merce Cunningham. More recently, Mikhail Baryshnikov and prima ballerina Alessandra Ferri, who retired in her 40s, only to return in her early 50s, and is performing the world to greater acclaim. So naturally, I wondered how many others were there still performing, and would they be interested in taking part in a survey? So Kilda Northcote, New Zealand, and these are just a few of the dancers. Louise Le Cavalier, the punk princess of contemporary dance. Charlotte Offerholm, Sweden. Jennifer Jackson, the UK. The extraordinary Australian dance artists. And without shadow of a doubt, 108-year-old Eileen Kramer, Australia's greatest, oldest living dancer. But the other great inspiration is NDT3, known as Netherlands Dance Theatre, created by Yuri Kilian in 1991. And he created it for dancers between 40 and death. He really believed that the waste of dancers was criminal and that these dancers had so much more to give. Sadly, the company folded in 2006 due to funding, perhaps another form of ageism. Dancers and educators Mark Edward and Helen Newell discuss the mature dancer's corporeal ability, their embodied experience and maturity, and state how undervalued their presence is and would be if they were totally alienated. They say a dancer's body is a phenomenological breathing curriculum vitae. As we know, the dance world upholds strict age limits, the idealization of the perfect youthful body. Dancing past 40 is rare, and there are exceptions, such as Alessandra Ferri mentioned previously, who is showing the aging body can still move beautifully. Life experience is slowly becoming an appreciated asset, but youth and agility and beauty continue to be the qualities upheld as the standards expected of classical ballet, with the bar being slightly lower for contemporary dancers. The independent sector has been more welcoming to older dancers who wish to pursue their careers, but many state that finding work or even being programmed is an ongoing issue. Dancer and academic Mark Edwards states, dance needs older, visible dancing bodies which can dislodge and move aging and ability discrimination. As with all activism, visibility of aging is needed for it to become normalized. Danse en ensemble. The corporeal difference of the older professional dancer becomes a political stance in an art form that we know demands perfection. Therefore, it opens debate about the corporeality of these dancers who still wish to pursue a career and who need sympathetic choreographers to produce work for them. We need to see older dancers represented in our companies, just as is mirrored within Western society. Audiences have shown greater appreciation at being represented on theatre stages. And this has been researched by the newest mature dance company, Dansons Ensemble, created in Berlin in 2015 and fully funded by the German government. This company has found that great choreographers are eager to make work for these exemplar dancers. The company is now on its second iteration and will receive further federal funding of 2.8 million euros from 2023 to 2027. This is an incredible coup. They are currently touring all over Europe. Jump onto Instagram and follow them. They are extraordinary. Embodiment. It goes without saying that dancers over 40 carry years of dance training and embodied knowledge. Dance scholar Elizabeth Schwager states, aging should be valued as an embodied accumulation of knowledge and wisdom, which has traditionally been largely neglected in Western cultures. Western dance culture continues with the concept of the ideal body, whilst wrestling, as suggested by dance scholar Anne Cooper-Albright in Mining the Dance Field, that lived bodies strain at the seams of a culture's ideological fabric. And here we have, I adore this photograph. This is the incredible Swedish dancer Siv Anders, here in her mid-70s, performing in Hege Hagenrud's subliminal work, Use My Body While It Is Still Young. And Hege was very, very conscious that there was no work being made for older dancers, or that even older dancers, where the hell were they? So she produced this beautiful work, which later was shown at Dance Umbrella in London in 2016. Dance scholar Kathleen White states, ageism saturates culture in which the dancer has to accept the undefended aspects of age. So it became apparent to me that to create dance films showcasing the creativity of older dancers meant that they could have a digital presence. They can be seen anywhere, anytime, due to the accessibility of social media, dance film festivals, art galleries, your iPhone. They could be seen. Screen dance is a new genre that allows an interconnectivity, bringing diversity and inclusion through dance films. So through the digital dance, it has literally moved from the theatre stage, taking dance outside its usual parameters to absolutely any location. So my creative research as a visual artist uses dance films to celebrate the mature dancer's corporeal difference and to demonstrate that their embodied practice, rather than their age, defines them. So I'm introducing Interprète, Inappropriate Behaviour. This work was created to highlight that these senior professional dancers are still performing. Screen dance gives them a platform to be rediscovered and to create visibility for an undervalued, underrepresented, and discriminated demographic. The work is composed of 8 solos by 8 senior professional dancers, 4 from the UK and 4 from Australia. And at the time of filming in 2015, they were aged between 55 and 65. And all 4 of them had got extraordinary careers behind them. It was filmed and edited by myself and then made into the one dance film. And I'll just show you a trailer of the work, which is very short. So by using dance film as the medium, I wanted to engage a new audience, to bring a new connectivity to viewing dancers and aging, and to demonstrate the positivity of aging by showing their embodied knowledge through movement, highlighting their craft, and to create a corporeal autonomy. Whoops, okay. So my process here is featuring my own body as the object in my dance films. Has been an interesting, I would say challenging, investigation through improvisation to highlight the subject of aging. As described by dancer and scholar Celeste Snober, the process of improvisation is an embodied ritual which leads us into not knowing and ultimately into knowing. So often I have no real idea how I'm going to choreograph a performance. So improvisation is a way of discovering whilst releasing pressure on the mind and letting flow happen in the body. Editing too could be seen as another form of choreography, as I often splice together pieces of footage to create interest. Seeing older women in film continues to be rare, let alone featured in dance film projects. By creating these dance films, it's a demonstration to feature, as described by age studies scholar Margaret Morgenroth-Gillette, age on the body. This issue is doubly loaded for women and mirrored for older dancers, but it is also a means to exhibit that aging can be viewed positively on screen, as opposed to being negatively compared, as sociologist Elizabeth Markson suggests, as symbols of decline. Indeed, feminist scholar Peggy Phelan states, underrepresented communities can be empowered by enhanced visibility. So I use film to highlight the subject of aging, not to affront an audience, but to empower and enhance appreciation of the lived experience of an older dancer. Utterly in or utterly appropriate, depending on your way of thinking. This is the first film I made and edited that featured my aging body as a subject and object of discussion. This was my first investigation of filming myself, and it was very confronting, both bodily and mentally. And I did receive some assistance from a colleague, as the effect that we wanted was to be as close as possible to a female dancer's body as she moved. This has been screened large scale in 2 art galleries in Brisbane. And we had some beautiful comments. And what was interesting, because obviously a lot of young people came in to see this particular body of work. And so many of them said they did not see age. They saw creativity. And I thought that's beautiful. So there's hope for us yet. So from here, Elizabeth Markson states, the portrayal of the female body in this medium, film, provides a kind of everyday politics of emotion and feeling that contours spectators' real, lived, emotional experiences. And I think we need to look beyond and realize that representation of the elder body gives a more balanced societal view of the dance world. Age, which I created in 2019, was filmed by Kelly McIlvenny this time and edited by me. Again, it was really scrutinizing the aging body, using myself up close and personal to reveal this older body. Assisted by Kelly with her, if any of you know cameras, she used a dolly prop on her camera, which really allowed her to come right up close to me. Again, it was improvised and often just one take. So, And all of these films you can find on Vimeo. And then finally, Terrain, Dancing on Stolen Land, which was filmed in the Australian outback, taking invisibility again as the subject matter, the older woman juxtaposed against an ancient landscape, devoid of the First Nations people, a silent invisibility. Totally improvised, one afternoon in the outback, shot around one location, an old stockyard, which could be read as a metaphor for aging, rusty, abandoned, broken. And I'll just show you a clip from the film. Here we go. And it has an unusual sound score. and just a bibliography. Okay, thank you so much for attending and listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. Thank you. I mean, this is absolutely exciting, and it's really, really really interesting to kind of hear you talk about embodiment in such a way. I mean, I'm not obviously from a dance background myself, so hearing embodiment in being talked about in these terms is really, really fascinating. So a round of applause. There was some virtual round of applause as well already. So thank you very much. First of all, just to say, I'd like to kind of kick off a bit of a conversation with Sonia first, but if you do have any questions, please raise your virtual hand or your real hand, unmute yourself, switch on your camera, get involved in the discussion, and if you don't feel comfortable doing that, please use the chat function and I will raise the questions on your behalf. But it'd be nice for Sonia to be able to connect with all of us in some ways. May I ask you, Sonia, to stop sharing your screen so we can see a little bit more of you?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Is that better? Hang on.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So let me kick off this conversation first of all. I mean, obviously, in terms of I've got two questions that relate to the Practice as Research Network specifically. The first one relates to how you can sort of navigate the space between being an artist, an activist, and being a researcher. So that's kind of one area of I'd like to discuss. And then the other area I'd like to discuss is the ethics. I mean, obviously there are ethical issues with people's bodies not being used because they are considered as too old. But what else did you encounter in your research in terms of ethical issues that you had to navigate by specifically inviting people of with older bodies of a particular sort of age in terms of engaging in your research? Should we start with that first, with that sort of ethical conundrum first?
Okay, well, to be honest, every conference or a dance conference I've been to, I've always been the elephant in the room, because generally speaking, most people don't care about older dancers. They're not interested. But things have really, really changed since the Elixir Festival in London in 2014 and Charlotte Offerholm's Age on Stage, and of course Dance en Ensemble in Berlin. People are really beginning to realize that these older dancers, were young ones, but they are even more embodied, embellished, full of life experience. So people are beginning to wake up to the fact that they're extraordinary artists. And as I said, Dance en Ensemble had done a survey, and the majority of audiences that came to see them dance were generally people over 40, let's say, and who were delighted to see themselves represented on stage. So I thought that was something I hadn't really thought about. Well, that's wonderful. Ethically, most of the dancers in my research are known dancers. So not to be confused with community dance. These are dancers who have trained, who have professional bodies. They are the trained dancer. So they, in fact, they weren't that hard to find because it kind of snowballed. Someone would say, oh, well, do you know so-and-so? And I go, oh, no, I don't actually. And so it would go from there. And then, of course, there were some extraordinary, very famous dancers. I mean, obviously, I interviewed the late Gérard Lemaitre and Sabine Kupferberg from NDT3 because they were right at the beginning in 1991 of being the first company to have older dancers and to be extraordinary. And so I've met some incredible dancers who are dancing with new knees, new hips, one with a complete ankle reconstruction. Age does not stop them. I think we just have to educate audiences that there are these extraordinary artists out there, but probably not so much the audience, it's the programmers. They're the people who are either allowing people to dance or not. So it is quite contentious. Yeah. I mean, I've got into a few sticky situations.
Yes. I mean, it's interesting to hear that you were saying that, professional dancers actually continue dancing professionally after serious surgery. I mean, a hip replacement or a knee replacement isn't something that you would do on an everyday basis, is it? So, that's really interesting. But also, I kind of wonder the ethics, I mean, of engaging with participants who are obviously known in the field, who you know as famous people, who you introduce us as famous people, and you're labeling them as aging dancers. I mean, I guess society's labeling them as well, and they probably label themselves as well. But where is the, you know, again, this is kind of an ethical issue, really. You know, it's not just, you don't keep them anonymous, you don't keep them hidden away.
No.
Is, you know, so how do you navigate that space?
That's a very interesting point, because I know that there have been several people who have done research on older dancers and not named them. My premise was to name these dancers, to alert a lot of people who know these dancers, who are kind of going, gosh, I didn't know they were still dancing. And people like Arlene Kramer, I interviewed her when she was 5 years ago. So I'm just trying to think, she was probably 103 or something at the time. And she said, you know, I don't know how old I am and I don't really care. I mean, I just want to dance. And another extraordinary dancer in the States, whose name I've completely forgotten, who basically said, I'm going to dance whether you like it or not, because I live to dance. And I think a lot of them, it's passion. And, you know, that kind of generation, they didn't learn anything else. You know, that's what they want to do. They want to dance forever, you know, until they literally exit stage right. So ethically, I suppose, I think I very much wanted to give them a voice, because dancers speak with their bodies. You rarely hear a dancer talk. So to then interview 37 dancers and to hear them give their opinions on their fitness, what other people thought about them as older dancers, I mean, it was a very long list. But I thought it was very important to give them a voice. I mean, we know they're fantastic dancers, but we don't hear them speak. And I also come from a background, I mean, I'm in my 60s. I mean, when I was a young dancer, I mean, it was always a case of don't talk, dance. Nobody cares what you've got to say. So I really feel it's important now for these dancers to speak out, because the dancers of today who are 20 and 30 years old will one day be older dancers, but we're hoping they will just be dancers, no old or young in front of it. That's what we're looking at. And I think we really need to push that, you know.
Do you think, in terms of like activist work, it's more helpful to have the names of the big dancers behind you?
I think so. I mean, because most of them are known. I mean, obviously they come from all different countries, and some I knew better than others. So, I mean, I think it was very exciting to find that these dancers were still going. I mean, realistically, I met Louise Le Cavalier in 2013 at the Adelaide Festival. And I had seen her in 1988 at Sadler's Wells and been blown away by this extraordinary woman. And to then see her at 55 dancing, you know, and I asked a lady in the audience beside me, I said, you know, do you know how old this dancer is? And she said, no idea. I said, well, if I told you she was 55, would you believe me? And she said, no, I don't think so. So these dancers have got extraordinary bodies, but they also they've lived a life. So they can bring so much to a performance by raising an eyebrow or whatever, you know, that they are incredibly subtle performers. And I think we have to, I mean, obviously we love young dancers, don't get me wrong, because I'm being ageist in a way, because I love young dancers because they are fantastic. But you can't expect those kind of tricks and, you know, elasticity to go on. So older dancers bring other things to the performance. And I think, you know, when you watch Eileen, who is still dancing 108, I mean, sure, she's not moving a whole pile, but what she does, you can't take your eyes off her. So it is very, very interesting. And I think, yeah, we need to make it a level playing field if it's possible.
Can I just say, I mean, it's interesting that you say that we can't expect older dancers to do, like, you know, the things that younger dancers do, because obviously the bodies are different.
Yeah.
But actually you have shown us in your presentation a photograph of a dancer who you said was in her 70s, mid 70s, doing effectively what looks like a plank. And quite frankly, you know.
Yeah, I know. Shiv's incredible. incredible. But I guess the fact of the matter is they have moved from, let's say, 4 or 5 years of age, and they've never stopped moving. So they are incredible advertisements for keeping fit, keep moving. You know, like I said, still moving, still moving. So not only is the body moving, the brain is doing the same. So, you know, oh, look, it blows my mind. Honestly, I mean, a few years ago, I was doing ballet classes in London with a wonderful teacher called Roger Tully, who sadly is no longer with us. And the class is full of mature ballerinas in their 60s who are all asking how they can perfect something. And it just, my head exploded because I thought, this is incredible. And it just shows you, you never know it all. There's still so much more to gain and different ways of doing things and presenting them.
Well, in a way, that leads quite nicely back to my other question I had about, you know, navigating that space between being a researcher, a practitioner, and an activist, and how you make sense of that triangle and where you sit. I mean, looking at the films, for example, to me, the films looked very much aesthetically beautiful and really impactful in that respect. So they, to me, they look more like pieces of art than, say, pieces of research. And I'm not saying that in any way to be judgmental, but this is just kind of, you know, how do you navigate that space, really?
Oh gosh, it's really hard. I think I became a visual artist in 2011, which gave me a very different way of thinking, because dance can sometimes be very, very negative. In some respects, like you're constantly trying to get somewhere which you never can. Whereas as a visual artist, I find there's so many more trajectories and different ways of doing things. So the research, writing, I hate writing. I'm a dancer. I'd much rather dance for you than sit down and write an essay. So that was very challenging, very challenging. And having to learn an academic language, my head exploded. But to make the films happen quite by accident. I had a tutor, I was learning to be an etcher, and he didn't think my work was of a very high standard. So he said, go and make a film. So I was so angry, I went and made a film of me literally printing and etching, which was highly comical. And that set me on a way of thinking, right, I can say probably more in a film than I can probably in an essay. So with the 8 dancers who, basically, I sent them a small film of me doing some movements, and I asked them to emulate them or not. And that was quite a big thing to do, because I thought, you know, they could just go, no thanks, we're not interested. But they all did. I couldn't believe it. So I went and filmed the 8 dancers, one take. And it was very interesting because the classical dancers were very upset. They wanted to do at least 4. I said, no, you can only do 1. And the contemporary dancers were very, very sorted and went, done. So then we had these 8 fantastic solos, which we showed in a gallery, large scale, very exciting. Again, people were just completely mystified and excited looking at these extraordinary bodies. And then I edited it into a film, the one piece. And then strangely, because I didn't want it to be about me, but then I thought, well, I am that age group. So why don't you try and do some film on yourself? Which when you see utterly inappropriate, you will see it is very inappropriate. It's me very scantily dressed, dancing around, doing stuff. And it was to provocate, you know, to say, this is an older dancer, this is what you look like. So yeah, I don't know if I've answered that correctly, but it's been a crazy journey.
No, it's really interesting to hear you talk about the process of it. So, you know, I mean, there's a question in the chat box which kind of relates to what you were just touching upon, and it's kind of trying to dive into that a little bit further. And it's around, you know, ethical considerations. If you yourself are the research participant, if you're doing research effectively on yourself. But I'm not quite sure whether this is the right way of looking at it, or whether it may be a better way of looking at it, that you are doing practice as research, as in you're not a research participant, you're the practitioner who's doing the research. Maybe it's more like along the lines of autoethnographic pieces of work in a way. But how do you reconcile the ethics in that space?
Right. Well, again, coming from a visual arts perspective, it's quite different. We use practice as research pretty much sort of everything, you know, anything like I wake up in the morning, oh, that's practice as research. You know, I mean, it could be absolutely anything. And I think originally the idea for Utterly Inappropriate was I did a residency. I had to make a film in 3 days. And being a dancer, you're like, okay, you've got 3 days, make a film. That's what I did, edited it, I didn't expect it to be, I expected it to be part of a body of work, but not to be actually exhibited. And it's gone on to be included in film festivals here, there, and everywhere. So ethically, I'm not really sure how to answer that. I mean, I think there comes a point where, like I said, I am that age too. So if I couldn't get other dancers, why not use your own body? I guess that's where I'm coming from. And as a visual artist, that kind of is like, put yourself out there. It's like walking the plank. You think, okay, but then you have to sort of, from a dance perspective, you try not to look too hard into it. You have to look at it as a visual artist, and that's very different. Then I can deal with it because it is very confronting. You look at it and just go, oh, that's horrible.
But it's not
that's my body.
Yes, well, I was just saying, I mean, this is something, you know, you're putting yourself out there in a way that makes you probably terribly vulnerable. And, you know, you're exposing yourself. And obviously dance is also in itself quite an emotional way of practicing embodiment. So you're putting yourself into the movements as well, not just, you know, so yeah, I can imagine how difficult that must be.
Yeah, it's like having two heads and two hats. And you literally have to sort of put one away and just concentrate on the content, which is, as I said, showing an older dancer doing whatever. And if it, you know, when it's shown, like all these films are shown very large scale in galleries, and it does have a very, it's really interesting to sit in and hear people's comments, to see a large, you know, old person on the screen, you know, but there comes a point where they're looking at movement and whatever else. And because we don't see enough of older people in magazines, on the television, you know, a lot of people don't know what an older body looks like, let alone a dancer's body, you know. So when you show a picture of like Siv Anders, people either look at it or run away and go, oh my God. But that is a body that is so highly tuned. It's incredible. Yeah. You know, it really is. So, and they're very willing. I mean, as a dancer, that's it. Your body is your tool. Yes. So you can't hide.
Can I just ask, did you get ethical clearance for your research? Did you have to get ethical clearance? How did you navigate this clearance process?
Absolutely. Before it could even go ahead, I had to get ethical clearance, particularly for all the interviews I did, for the survey. Every dancer had to obviously say that it was okay. In the end, we only used 8 dancers for the degree as such, but I have used since then, a lot of the comments have gone into papers, and in fact we've got a chapter coming out next year, oh no, it's this year, which will mention some of the work. But yes, ethical clearance, absolutely. Griffith would have locked me in a cupboard and not let me out unless I got ethical clearance.
But did you know exactly what to, as in, you know, like for somebody who's potentially starting out on a project like this, they may not necessarily know what their outcome is. They may not necessarily know how, you know, where they're going to go. Did you know straight from the beginning that you were going to make films?
That's a good question. Can't remember actually. It was 23rd. Let me just think. Yeah, I think, well, you know how it is when you start a degree, you come up with this concept, you know, and you never really know where it's going to take you. No. So I can safely say that's true. I ended up doing things that I did not expect to do. So I as I said, with the 8 dancers, that was fantastic. But I didn't imagine that it would go further on to then using myself as another example. So yeah, and I think in a visual arts degree, you never quite know where you're going to go, and often in visual arts they love the journey much more than the end product.
Yes.
So, you know.
I think, I mean, that's probably true for most practice as research work, that, you know, people are about the process as much as about the final output.
Yeah.
And that actually a lot of the time, I mean, in my own work as well, I do get ethical clearance before I start a project, but then I don't know exactly where it's going to take me. So I basically just say, well, this is what I definitely know. Can we just clear this part? And once I've gone through that stage, I can then go back as with an amendment and say, well, actually, now I know where I'm going next. So I've got a sort of, you know, like a phases you know, approach to ethical approvals, I suppose.
I mean, I think obviously when I started, because I did an honours degree just before, where I had 3 dancers, and then when it went on to become the doctorate, there were so many dancers. It got to the point where I just thought this could go on forever, you know. And also, I mean, for me, it was amazing I think the generosity, that really, really was fantastic. So many dancers just wanted to help and be involved, and I thought that was wonderful. I mean, dancers generally will pretty much do anything for nothing. I mean, they're just so generous and kind. And to work with, you know, 2 of those dancers were from the original London Contemporary Dance Theatre Company, who I watched as a young dancer, and to work with these people was mind-blowing, you know. Trying to contain your nerves, you know, filming these people who are so professional, you know, they just did the job. The rest of it was editing, and that was great fun. I can safely say I didn't know how to edit a film. I learned, you know, it's been an incredible experience, the whole thing. But yeah, I think just these dancers, I think just wanting so much to let people know that there are these incredible artists, and we need to see them on our stages more, you know. It's happening, but we need more.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Sonia. This has been an incredible hour. I can't believe that it's already gone. I just want to say again, thank you so much for having been here. For the benefit of anybody who's joining us, the next session will be on the 1st of February from 2 p.m. UK time, and this will be Federica Manfredi talking about hooks and pain, ethical concerns in practice-based research on body suspensions. In case you don't know about body suspensions, it's a practice where you get hooked, the body gets hooked onto ropes and pulley systems, and it's really fascinating work that she does, and obviously the ethics of that is something that we have to discuss in more detail. Also, if you want to register, I will share the Eventbrite link for that. Also, if you want to catch up a little bit more with the Practices Research Network, I put into the chat box several links, but also find the links here on the slide to the YouTube channel, the Buzzsprout channel, where all of the recordings are available. And also there's the Practices Research website and my email address if you would like to get in touch. So again, Sonia, thank you so much for having been here, for spending your evening with us. It's been a pleasure, really enlightening, and I'm so excited to have had you, and I hope that our paths cross again soon.
Indeed. Thank you so much, and thank you, Nicole, and thank you everybody for listening. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much from Australia. Bye-bye.